he scared me. He scared me. I got off work one night and I just got done cleaning my horse corrals. I said, I'm going to go have a beer. I just hear this guy and he's like, Jesus, fuck. He's like, you're beautiful. I'm going to marry you one day. And I'm like, you're fucking high. I'm like, literally, I'm dirty. I'm covered in horse shit. I mean, I'm a disaster. Like, I'm like, no. Why shit you fucking not? Like 6 months later, guy ends up proposing, ends up being my husband. And in this whole year, I turned into a raging alcoholic, even more so. COVID. My girlfriend gets killed in front of me. My dad dies.
This is Rock Bottom with Ryan. No sugarcoating, no filters. The pain, the chaos, the truth. No bullshit. Just recovery.
Sober Strong apparel isn't just lifestyle wear, it's battle gear. We rep sobriety like a badge of honor, and every piece you throw on says you're part of the crew that doesn't back down. Every order fuels recovery with 10% donated to treatment facilities. Hit SoberStrongApparel.com and use code ROCKBOTTOM at checkout for 10% off. Stay sober, stay true, rep the crew.
All right, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom with Ryan. Rachel's absent today, but I'm here with our guest, Amanda. Amanda, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. So this is primarily a recovery podcast, so we like to go into a little bit about your life when it came to addiction and get into kind of where it started, where you're at now. So first I'll start off with what is your sober date?
So I was actually I got sober February 10th of 2023.
Okay. Awesome. So you're going on 3 years.
So I actually drink on occasion now. I went a year sober. I went I hit my full year sobriety. And then I had a massive drinking problem. Once I popped a drink open, I just didn't stop.
So that was your main drug of choice for sure?
Besides that, I'm just a stoner. I never done anything else, that was it. Like, just alcohol was my only thing, weed, but other than that, nothing.
Yeah.
Just nothing ever really enticed me. And
so the last couple years has been more controlled drinking, just doing it sparingly.
The last year, and the last year's been a really tough one for me, the last year and a half.
Really?
Last year and a half, my ex-husband left July 4th, 2023.
Okay. So did that trigger something?
You know what? I'm actually really glad I was sober through it, because I think if I wouldn't have been, I would have spiraled even more so. Prior to that, one of the main reasons I got sober was because I wanted to fix our marriage. We were already having a lot of difficulties. I got into a really bad accident, which is, for a lot of people, you would think that was a huge rude awakening for me. If we backtrack a couple years, well, no, not Halloween. It was October 9th of 2020. So we got COVID. Everybody's going crazy. I'm actually, at that time, was working at a bar. I'd been bartending and working food and beverage industry since I was in high school, 2005, 2004. Here I am now, it's COVID, and I'm working at a bar that's still open. And one of my really good friends, who I consider a sister, decides that, the whole story that you hear, the chicken cross the road.
Yeah.
There was literally a chicken that was crossing the road, and she had just had one beer, and she's sitting with my husband and one of my best friends at the time. And I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I gotta go get this chicken. It's crossing the road. And where my bar was at, it was one of the old highways. So I go out there, and she's dressed in all black. And I tell her, I said, hey, don't cross. There's a car coming. And the last words out of her mouth was, I got this. And she got killed on impact. I heard all the noises. She pretzel not basically through the air, and she got hit at 45 miles an hour and got tossed from the one end of the parking lot to the other, and she got killed on impact. I had to call
Gosh.
her husband, and basically I was in shock because she was only about 8 feet in front of me. I had already had a prearranged flight to fly home to Ohio. My biological father, who I had only met at an earlier age, I was 12. We can get into that in a second, but
Yeah.
my dad at this point, I had gotten a call that my dad was getting ready to pass. So I'd already had a prearranged flight. So she gets killed on impact on October 9th. I'm flying out October 11th to Ohio. So I went to work that following morning to go bartend because I had to make money. And I didn't sleep. I stayed up and drank the whole freaking night. I got on my flight that Sunday morning, and I'm still like not even processing what just happened in the last 24 hours. Fly out, fly back. My dad's taking his last breaths. My dad ends up passing 4 days, 5 days later, putting my dad's funeral together with my aunt. My dad dies, ends up passing. What got my dad into a situation was he was not only a heavy, heavy drinker, but a crystal and heroin addict.
Wow.
He was a partier. He was a singer in a rock band. And I didn't have him in my life growing up. My mom protected me from him.
So I guess, yeah, let's definitely backtrack a little then and kind of start from square one. What was your childhood like?
Childhood? I had a great childhood.
With parents and your dynamics, and then kind of like going into high school. When did you start drinking and all that stuff?
Well, I had a great childhood. My mom, who I call my dad, she met my dad when she was pregnant with me. There's just like one of those stories that you don't see very often anymore. They met, and 2 weeks later, they got married.
Wow.
Dad cut my umbilical cord and raised me. And I've got 2 really rad younger brothers. I've got, a rad older brother and my sister. Growing up, I was always like, well, why am I like the whitest one out of everybody? Because, I'm Mexican. And why am I the only one with green eyes and all this stuff? I got picked on by my cousins at like 13. No, it was like 12, 13. My cousins cornered me and told me that my dad didn't want me, and their uncle was just being nice, and he adopted me. So I come running out as a little girl, and I asked my mom, what's going on, and they finally end up telling me that, okay, we need to tell you something, and that's how I found out about my biological dad. My biological dad, my mom dipped out. She couldn't deal with it. She was 19 when she had me, and she was just protecting me. My dad had a substance abuse. And my dad never tried to reach out. He never anything. At that point, I was just kind of like, I felt like I got lied to. So probably about 14, 15 years old, I started drinking vodka in my Slurpee, started whatever was around the house, did the typical, would fill the bottles up with water. Mom and dad wouldn't notice. Started taking my dad's Marlboro Reds. I would just whatever, kind of numb it, started giving attitude.
And rebellious at the time.
Yeah.
Frustrated.
So I would
about your dad and stuff.
take my mom's checks and write them because I wanted to buy clothes and fit in with everybody. And there was no need for it. Like my mom and dad did everything they could for us, I got kicked out of the house at 17 because of my piss poor attitude. Ended up moving in with a friend of mine who was a stripper. We just partied and I drank and got to hang out with everybody. Leave it to that point where my cousin got killed 6 months after we graduated from high school, and she got killed by a drunk driver. My mom and dad said, nope, we got to get you out of here. I grew up in Ramona, so it's a small little community. We're up in the mountains.
Where's Ramona again?
San Diego, but we're up in the mountains. Yeah, we're up in the mountains.
Okay.
They said, nope, we're shipping you up to college. So I moved up to Atascadero up by Cal Poly.
And you got into college fine? Your grades were fine, all that?
I graduated Gold Court honors.
Wow.
I graduated high school Gold Court honors. Like I freaking, EMT school, like went to school to go do nursing, freaking, just sports. Like I was a jockey. I was a total nerd, but I don't
Cool,
know.
but you were one of those lucky people that could still be productive while having a good time too.
Yeah.
Mostly a good time.
And
Yeah.
then it came my dating life, I just dated shit dudes. I finally realized that the guys I was dating were the guys I always had to fix. I just realized this the other day. One of the first guys I started dating they basically dated me for what I had financially, and they knew that they could get what they wanted from me. I was the girl that threw the big house parties. I always hid under the alcohol. Like, it didn't matter. I always had a giant Sparks or a juice or a
Yeah.
bottle of something in my purse, or cigarettes, and it didn't matter. Like, I was always something. Fast forward a little bit, I got into a relationship with this guy. I ended up getting pregnant. I got told you're not having it. Was forced to have a abortion. Didn't know what to tell my parents. I come from a Catholic family.
How old were you at that point?
I was 19.
Okay. That had to have been really difficult.
Yeah. So I drank more and I kind of MIA'd from my family for a while. Didn't talk to anybody. I felt alone. I started go-go dancing in LA. At that time, it was Club Glam. Fast forward a little bit more. I started dating this next guy. I got pregnant. I miscarried. He became physically abusive to me. He came home one night. I was working 3 jobs, and at that time, this was back in like 2011, he would just come home, drink a handle, Captain Morgan or more, and would just pin me against the wall. Just whatever, and just blame everything on me. And I was paying like $1,800, $2,000 a month to live in this condo that we had and trying to keep things afloat. And I would literally get off work and just to numb it so that I couldn't feel anything once I got home. Would get off work and go drink 2 to 3 pitchers of beer. And most of the time I didn't remember coming home. Like, my car was sideways in my parking spot. I can't even tell you how many times my neighbors would come over and be like, "Hey, can you get your car out of my spot?"
Yeah.
Then I lost my condo. I ended up at that point then moving in with some friends and was couch surfing.
What was the demise of that relationship? Did you finally just had enough and you were losing the condo, or was it the abuse and losing the condo?
The breaking point of that one was the final straw was getting literally thrown through my living room wall and finding myself in my closet rocking back and forth and having my, at that time, 19-year-old brother and my mom showing up to pick me up. I didn't talk for 3 days. Nobody could get a word out of me.
Just
Nobody
in
knew
shock.
Nobody knew what was going on. My mom at that point also hadn't known that I had just had a miscarriage.
Jeez, I'm so sorry.
I come back, get back on my feet. I get everything situated, and I'm at that point, like, kind of couch surfing, and I start kind of hanging out with the wrong crowd. I'm hanging out with like the biker crowd and whatever. And this guy that I was dating at the time, who was part of the bike scene, was going to EMT school at that time. We were constantly running, and I never knew what we were running from. He was a paramedic by day, and at night, he was in a bike club, motorcycle club. I just remember one day I was asked by a president to take my shirt off, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was covered in bruises from my back and my arms. I never saw him after that.
So you think you were sexually assaulted, I assume?
Yeah.
Wow. I am so
He,
sorry.
he used to just physically throw himself at me. And I just remember during that phase, I pretty much just Boone's Farm bottles. I'd probably like the strawberry fields when they say that. I was like, 2 to 3 bottles a night of strawberry fields. Like, that was my jam.
Yeah.
Then I ended up getting married at 25. I met this guy, moved to Spain. He was in the military. And this guy had severe PTSD. Great guy. But I couldn't do it. His PTSD was triggering for me because he would have night tremors and the drinking got bad out there. And
Night tremors from the drinking or PTSD or
just
combination?
from war and from
Yeah.
combination of everything. So I ended up coming home and I hadn't dealt with things myself. So we end up getting separated. I come home. I come back to my small town. I wind up with another somehow dirtbag who puts on this facade of I'm such a great guy.
Yeah.
All this great guy stuff. I'm bartending again. I, at this point, didn't finish my nursing school. Paramedic AMT school just wasn't for me anymore. I've completely distanced myself from my family. I've started to gain weight. I mean, I'm almost 6 foot tall.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I've like hit like 250 pounds. I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, what is going on? And I meet this guy who I had kind of dated for a little bit back, when I was in high school, who was sober. He didn't drink. He didn't do drugs. He didn't anything. He didn't even have a tattoo on him. But when I come back, all of a sudden he's tattooed. He's this, he's that. I'm like, whoa, like he's totally changed, but cool.
Mm-hmm.
Totally had a really good face on. And then that face finally, after a couple months, came off.
Wow.
The verbal abuse started.
It starts small and just to kind of lure you in, and then by the time you're so invested in these relationships, all of a sudden they start letting loose, and you're like, "Whoa, where did
Every
all the
move,
toxicity come from?" It's like scary, right?
every move I did. Where the fuck are you going? Why aren't you home yet? You didn't tell me you were going here. I couldn't go to the grocery store. Like if I left work 5 minutes later than I was supposed to. So I would go grab a couple shots and put them in my purse and I would drink them in my car on the way to the house. And I had my own place, but if I didn't go to his house, I would get reprimanded for it. My dad at that point, my bio dad, I get the call that my dad I thought it was weird. My dad hadn't called me in a while. My dad had drank himself basically into a coma, and my stepmom let him seizure and finally watched him seizure long enough that she finally called the ambulance. And I hopped on a plane and I went back to Columbus, Ohio. And my dad had, at that point now, dementia, Alzheimer's, didn't know who I was anymore. So I never got to really know him. So for the next couple years, like I tried to get to know my dad, try to stick it out by myself for a little bit without kind of burdening anybody with problems. It's just kind of any like relationship I'd gotten into was either I fixed the people I was with, or once I fixed them, they're like, okay, thanks, bye.
Don't
Or
you hate that? That has happened to me before. Well, I fix somebody that needs to be fixed, and I feel like I care about them so much that I'm willing to commit to them. But as soon as they get everything together, all of a sudden it's like, oh, sorry, you don't need me anymore.
no. Well, then fast forward to December 2019. I go out one night randomly. Finally, the guy that was like the man of many faces, just finally one night, I creeped in, I grabbed all my belongings while he was sleeping, and I left because there was no other way to do it.
Yeah, I've been there before.
He scared me. He scared me. I got off work one night and I just got done cleaning my horse corrals. I said, I'm going to go have a beer. I just hear this guy and he's like, Jesus fuck. He's like, you're beautiful. I'm going to marry you one day. And I'm like, you're fucking high. I'm like, literally, I'm dirty. I'm covered in horse shit. I mean, I'm a disaster. Like, I'm like, no. Why shit you fucking not? Like 6 months later, guy ends up proposing, ends up being my husband. And in this whole year, I turned into a raging alcoholic, even more so. COVID. My girlfriend gets killed in front of me. My dad dies. I fly home. I never sit down to take time to process any of this. Here comes October 2021. It's Halloween Eve. I get off work. I should have already not been driving home. And there was a couple friends at our house partying, and we had a beautiful home. I mean, we had a beautiful home. Me and him were already struggling. We were already kind of on the rocks because he was there the night of the accident too. And I get on my golf cart, and everyone always goes to the golf cart. They're like, wait, what? I'm like, oh yeah, I was in my car. I was in my golf cart. I was doing 65 miles an hour. Fifth gear, had dirt bike motor in it. Fifth gear pinned. I got stuck in fifth gear. Brakes went out. I got ejected 20 feet. It basically broke my entire left side of my body. They told me I was never going to see out of my left eye again. I snapped my ulnar radius, broke all my ribs on my left side. I had 4 skull fractures, shattered my eye socket wall. I had 4 orbital fractures, lost all feeling from my hip to my knee, and then a bunch of stuff to my left foot. I just remember waking up in the trauma unit at the hospital, and what I could see, and the little I could open my mouth, because my mouth was just full of asphalt. I see my dad, which, is what people would say stepdad, but I see my dad, and he's just in tears. And I'm just looking at him, and he's like, and he just tells me, he's like, Mija, he's like, you have to eat. And I'm like, trying to open my mouth, and I'm like, I can't. And he's cutting up a sausage patty, and I'm like, I put myself in this situation.
Yeah.
But you know what the shittier part was? My husband wasn't there. And I get out of the hospital, and I go home. My mom was around. My dad and my aunts were around. I had to get bathed by my family. He didn't help me bathe. He didn't help me do any of that stuff.
I'm sorry.
Our wedding was coming up in like 5 months after that accident. I'm putting the wedding together. I end up re-snapping my arm. This arm, the titanium on one of the plates snapped. I get out of the hospital, and then my grandma passes. So it was just like punch after punch. Our wedding, we shouldn't have gotten married. It was already bad to begin with. He was so coked out of his mind.
At your wedding?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
He was coked out of his mind. We fought tooth and nails. I mean, his own mom said it. She's like, I didn't even know. She's like, I didn't even think you guys were going to walk down the aisle. My next surgery, I had to have my best friend take me to surgery because he wouldn't. He's like, I'm not the one that got the accident. She is. She can deal with it.
So you just
Go
felt so
forward
alone.
a little bit more. Go forward about 8 months. Started not feeling good, and I felt something was off with my body. I find out I have a 15-pound tumor in my uterus, and I get called after my MRI. They called me immediately and said, you need to come in. You have to have an emergency C-section. They're like, your uterus is going to erupt. Because I started dropping weight. At that point, I'd hit basically 300 pounds. At that point, I didn't care. I was just self-destructing. I didn't know what to do anymore. I went out all the time. I was just drinking. I wasn't driving anymore at this point. I figured, I'm not driving. I'm good. I got a DD, but I was still drinking. You would have thought my accident would have stopped me. No. Then they tell me my tumor and this is going to happen. And I'm just like, wait, what? So I go in, and this was the topper for me. And this is what made me realize that something needed to change. My ex-husband, I felt like an animal getting dropped off to get neutered. I said, my dad's with me. My ex-husband's with me. And he goes, I said, oh my gosh. I said, when I wake up from surgery, I said, can you bring me, and I never want McDonald's. I said, can you bring me a Big Mac? He goes, you can't eat that. I said, it just sounds so good when I wake up. I said, hospital food sucks. We got in a little tiss fit over the fact he wouldn't bring me a Big Mac.
Gosh.
Instead of giving his wife a kiss and saying surgery's going to be okay, knowing I'm a fucking disaster and I'm freaked out as shit right now, he just storms out, sends my dad in. My dad says a prayer over me, gives me a hug, and says, everything's going to be okay. I'll see you when you wake up. And I said, okay. This guy has the nerve to walk into my room once I'm awake and coherent with a fucking McDonald's cup. And I didn't see him again after that for 5 days. He literally waited for the second they called and said she's ready to get picked up. I got home. And then he has the nerve to pick me up in the biggest vehicle we owned. The tallest vehicle we owned.
Pretty much have to lift you in there.
No, I didn't get lifted. I didn't get any assistance. I had to pick myself up.
Jeez.
I get home and I'm on my own again. At this point, I'm like cut straight across my gut. So I'm like picking myself up, and I had to do everything on my own again. I'm back by myself. We're just fighting constantly, 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 constantly. And finally, I said, something's got to give. I got to get help. I need to get sober. I can't do this anymore. He kept saying, you're the problem, you're the problem, you're the problem, you're the problem. So I said, fine. They put me in through a family intervention. They made me look like the devil, this, and that. Like, I was just the worst person. Like, I knew I needed help, and I knew I just needed the right people to be around.
Yeah.
But the way that it was all crumbling around me, like, I didn't know who I needed to reach out to for the help. I kept looking at patterns in the people I was surrounding myself with. And so I reached out to one of the girls. I know there's like the Sobriety Sisters group, and it was probably one of the best things I did. And I would sit there and I'd journal, and I got sober, and you know, he's like, you need help, this, and that. I got sober and I felt good. And I dealt with a lot of emotions. The first month, God, there was a lot of crying,
What were some of the first things that you were processing?
a lot of anger. I was angry, a lot of stuff that I was angry at when I was younger. I was upset at my dad, like, why did my dad want me? I had a lot of like rejection issues. Um, I've got, a, I've, oh, I always knew some way, somehow I had abandonment issues, especially like by just relationship wise. Like, why, if I'm such a good person and I'm, all these things people say I am, then why doesn't anybody ever stick around? And then it hit me. Like, I found a good counselor. And when we went back and we talked through it kind of stemmed, I was angry with my dad when I found all that out. And I never got to ask all those questions. And then my relationship patterns, the good people I did have, or the ones I would meet and then basically I would fix them, then they would bounce and they would either go back to their exes or they would go on to the ones that they said were friends. And other ones, I never got closure with dealing with my dad's passing or my friend Brittany's passing. I finally actually just recently went back up to her site where she passed and was able to put flowers up for her anniversary. It's been 5 years. My ex-husband, I still have my moments with him. You know, when he left, God, I don't have hate for that man. I'm hurt with that man because when he left, come to find out, he's got some really bad, at the end of the day, he was the one with the addiction issues, and it was a man with multiple masks.
And he was really good at reversing all those things on you, making you feel bad, like gaslighted.
I mean, I admitted my faults and I admitted my problems with alcohol, but I didn't know that he actually had a substance abuse issue. And finally, it all unveiled. He slept with multiple people in my town, women. He made me look like a fool. Left me for a mutual friend. He slept with one of my coworkers.
Jeez.
Like, I just find all these things out. And the more and more I find out, I'm like, I really didn't know this person. I mean, now I've been with my boyfriend now. We've had our trials and tribulations. We've been dating each other because we're both going through a difficult time. We're both going through some pretty, he was with, he was with his ex-wife for 20 years, but we've been seeing each other for about a year now. And if there's one thing I can say is I'm thankful for him in my life because he's been a huge blessing for me because we've challenged each other to just become better. And, you know, it's one of those where we can admit each other's faults. We don't, we've done our best to never raise our voices at each other, to never, you're boom, 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 boom. It's not just a one-sided thing where for me, it's always been like, I've always been the problem. And it's like, if I'm such a bad person, we just had this conversation last night. And it kind of dawned on me. It was the first time in a long time I was able to just sit down, just in general, with someone I'm in a relationship with and actually talk without arguing, but without alcohol involved,
Yeah.
without anybody getting their feelings hurt. Being able to say, this is how I'm feeling. This is PTSD for me when you do this, or when this has happened, this is what triggers me.
Communication.
Yeah, and that's something I've never been able to do because anytime I've ever tried to do it before, it turns into somebody yelling and I go into protection mode and I just shut down or I would start to drink and I was, there was at times you could probably find me in my closet. I could tell you there was times where my bar tabs, it was so typical night for me used to be $200 to $300 by myself. Now you're lucky if I even go out. I just went out. I'm not gonna lie, I went out Friday. Lord, it's been months since I've gone out. It was weird. Everybody's face when I walked in was like in awe. They're like, "Oh my God, you're out?" And I'm like, "Huh." you know, I spent a whopping $28.
Uh,
Lord.
Hey, that's a
Oh
solid bar
man,
tab.
she's getting wild, but like for me to say that compared to $300 prior, it's like that's a huge thing for me. But it's also one of those now where it's like I'd rather just go get a hot tea at Starbucks or just sit at home and watch a movie and relax. When I tell people, I'm like, I'm not sober, but I'm also not the person I was anymore.
That's what matters.
I don't have to use it as a coping mechanism anymore. Do I have my days I fall apart and I want to just completely scream and I feel like I'm losing myself? Yes. Am I 297 pounds anymore? No. I'm 151 pounds and I don't know how to handle it. It freaks me out. Now I'm dealing, unfortunately, with body dysmorphia, which you would think that's really weird. My boyfriend's trying to figure that out. He doesn't know how to handle that. He's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, okay, in the mirror, in my mind, I still see 300 pounds. I've always been the big kid.
Yeah, I
I
was
just,
never that big, but I've suffered from body dysmorphia for a long time. That's something I need to go into more on the podcast someday. But I see something different in the mirror too. But people say I look great. I'm like, I don't see it. So I still feel like I have to hit the gym religiously.
well, and I hit the gym, but I don't, now when I feel like going to grab a drink, I end up going running. I learned that I
Yeah,
like to run.
me too. I love running.
You
That's a
know,
drug within itself.
I like running. When I feel like going to grab a cigarette, I'll go run or I lift weights. I learned that I'm a lot more flexible than I thought I was. I used to not be able to put my freaking leg over my head. Now I'm just like, hello. Maybe
So
I could have
now,
been a cheerleader. I don't know.
so now you still drink occasionally, but you still have a lot more healthier lifestyle choices.
I can get up now on a Saturday morning and, I just had my nephew with me. He was 6. I had him for the weekend. Me and him rock, paper, scissored on can we sleep in till 8 o'clock? And he was like, no, we're going to get up early. Guess Auntie was up at 6 a.m. and this one slept in until 8:45. And I lost the bet still, according to him, so I had to get a Starbucks. But, you know,
Nice.
because no matter what, I'm still up at, what I used to sleep in till noon, 1 o'clock. I'm now up at 4 a.m. and in bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock. Do I get made fun of and get called old because I'm in bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock at night? Yeah.
It's called having a routine. That's healthy.
If you're trying to call me and tell me like, "Hey, let's meet up," and it's 8 o'clock at night, I'm telling you to kick rocks because
Yeah.
that's not my life anymore.
Yep.
Maybe on a blue occasion,
Yeah.
but I I just can't. Like I feel it. My body took a toll. I did that for a long time. There was days where, if everyone used to make fun of me. They're like, for somebody that doesn't do cocaine or do any of that stuff, how the fuck do you stay up for days on end? I'm like, I'm just naturally a crackhead. I don't know. But I also ran on a lot of fucking Red Bulls back in the day. Like, I honestly lived on Red Bulls and fucking alcohol.
Wow.
It was bad. I honestly don't know how I didn't get myself a fucking heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. I was doing cocaine, drinking coffee, taking caffeine pills, taking Adderall. I was like, how the heck did my heart not explode?
I mean, if I even attempt to have a Red Bull or energy drink after 11, and I'm not going to sleep that night. You know, it was bad. There's a lot of people that they hear certain stuff that's happened to me, and they're like, "Wait, what?" I think one of the biggest shocker for, especially like my boyfriend, for instance, he's like, "How have you gone through everything you've gone through, had your heart broken, how you've had it broken, yet still remain to have such a big heart and love the way you love?" Honestly, I don't think if I had gotten sober for a year, I'd be able to love the way I love right now. And like, even when it comes to my ex husband, because I genuinely thought that was my person, when I say even through the hell he put me through, and I don't think he realizes the hell he put me through. And being able to have seen all the masks and make me out to be that villain in his story, at the end of the day, I just miss the friend I had with him. But I also wish that when I got myself sober and he asked me to get sober, that he would have supported me. One of the first things that we did when I got sober was we went to Vegas because we were in a friend's wedding, and it didn't even take half an hour before he was putting it up his nose.
Jeez.
But I stuck it out. I stayed sober, where now I've got the support system. And it's just crazy, I guess, to think that maybe I do have such a big heart. And I don't know how I do, but I always tell people it's got a lot of duct tape and a lot of fucking glue on it. And I don't know.
Amazing. How have your other relationships kind of become more positive since you've stopped making alcohol such a huge part of your life? Like, what else has improved?
I don't get irritated with my mom. I'd get super angry and frustrated with my mom that I didn't want to answer her calls anymore. Now I like talk to my mom whenever she calls, and I'm more patient with her. I've cut out a lot of friendships. I've realized that this person that used to think she needed all these thousands and thousands of people, I've probably got maybe like 5 really good friends. I realized that I'm actually super introverted. I'm not extroverted. I really don't.
No, it's okay. I get it.
It's not that I don't like a lot of people. I actually don't like a lot of attention. I like talking to people, but I don't like talking to people as much as I thought I did. And it was just the alcohol that was helping with that.
Hmm.
But it's definitely brought me closer to family, which is a good thing for me because my family's always been super tight. And that's one thing I did notice, that once I got kicked out at 17, I became super distant. Nobody knew who I was anymore. I left this little girl that had like nothing on her skin, just whatever, came back super pierced up, like 10,000 colors in her hair, super broho, blasted up. Now I look normal. And of course, like if you catch me in the summertime with shorts, you see my tattoos everywhere, but I'm finally back to normal and I'm feeling myself. I don't have to put on, I guess, my own masks and pretend I'm something I'm not.
And is that
And
speaking of tattoos, I was going to ask what was your reasoning behind getting Let Them tattooed on you?
let them talk, let them think. When I read the actual story and heard the story and then actually read it, a huge reasoning behind it was honestly my ex-husband. He had so many people convinced, like I said, I was the villain. I was just this monster. I mean, my mother-in-law even thought I was just this fucking monster, and I made him so miserable. And I said, God, I just hope one day, sure as heck, I don't wish anything on anybody. But it all unraveled and everybody figured out what kind of person he was. And lo and behold, I don't know where he is anymore. He's ran off and done his own thing, and he's created his own hole. He's ruined a lot of relationships for himself. Now I go out in public and people go like this. And one of my first things with people, and these were people that were, people I knew prior, that talked crap about me because they all went straight to him because that was their source. And It's almost like an embarrassment thing. I was like, you guys talk so much crap about me. You guys wanted to build your own personas because all of a sudden, he
Yeah.
was the one to hang out with. And now they see me and it's like I did this past weekend. I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm not mad at you. And they were all, What? And I'm like, no, you know,
Yep. That's good.
you guys want to judge and you guys want to do that. That's all on you. But at the end of the day, we're all adults. You don't need to be my friend. We can be acquaintances. You can either be mature or not. I mean, it's like you don't judge a book by its cover. It's either you're going to read it or you're not. You know, I could see like the people I surround myself with. If you looked at my group of friends that I consider, they're not friends, they're family to me. You'd probably be like, that is the most awkward group. That one's probably a total asshole. That one was probably like the high school cheerleader. That one's a super East County bro or whatever. Or whatever, that was like a
Yeah.
massive nerd, blah, 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 this and that. How the hell did that whole group go together?
My friend group, and since I've been in recovery, it's like it doesn't make any sense probably to the average person. But I've got my closest friend is almost 90 years old. I got another close friend who's 78. Got just like just a random array of people that it's like, what?
One of my best friends is, mid 40s or mid 50s. And one of my other closest friends who I talk to is, same thing, it's like in their 60s. And so it's like, but the other one's one of my best friends. She's, me and her, we're like this. And the best part is we don't say anything to anybody. So it's like everything we say stays between us. And when you see us out in public, nobody even knew we were friends. And it's just, that's how we like to keep things. It's fun. It's just, I don't know, my life's become a lot more private. It's not one of those I have to post about it anymore. I used to feel like everybody needed to know everything. And now it's just, my favorite thing now is less is best. That was another thing I noticed is I used to feel I always had to be doing something. I always had to have everything planned. And I always had to have, almost felt like every corner, every nook and cranny filled with something. And now the less things I have around, the better for me. And the less things I have to do, the better. Because by the end of the day, sometimes I'm just tired and I just want to go home and go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I've finally hit that point where I can finally just relax.
Exactly. Love that.
And
You're at peace.
I don't have to be, my shoulders. My boyfriend used to say, he's like, you just stand like you're so tall all the time. He's like, I think you finally hit your feminine era. He's like, you can finally just chill.
Yeah. That's
And it's
awesome.
kind of weird because I never understood it. And I finally said, I was like, try to open a jar the other day. And I was like, can't open this jar. I'm like, what the heck? And he goes, oh, is someone getting girly? And I'm like, oh, I don't like this.
Yeah. I'd be like, please open this for me.
I'm like, can you please open this jar? And he goes, all right. And I'm like,
Teamwork sometimes is necessary.
yeah, it's definitely teamwork, but I'm learning to embrace it because it's something I've never been able to do. I've always had to, I guess, I was always so wound up. And it's because I always had
The recording stopped really quick.
there we go.
There. Yeah. So like what have you had any moments since you've say been, put that past behind you, been, functioning, drinking occasionally and stuff? Had you had any moments where you just wanted to numb yourself, go overboard with drinking and then had to stop yourself and do something healthier or
No, to be honest, like, I don't know. No, not even like there's been, so like even this summer, like I finally got back into being able to go into the river, going to the desert. It used to be like we'd go to the desert and the river. Didn't even worry about getting food. You were just like, all right, cool. I'm going to grab like 10, 12 packs. Yeah, let's roll. Didn't even worry about water. And this time around, I'm like, dude, all right, I'm spending like $500 on food. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I guess we can grab a 12 pack. Let's go. We're coming home. We're coming home with alcohol, but we're not coming home with any food. I just had to learn to take better control of things. And it wasn't anything where, you know, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't days where I'm just like, Today's one of those days, if I just had a bottle of tequila, I'd just go smash it.
Yeah.
But will I do it? No.
Yeah.
Because at the
'Cause,
end of the day, what's it going to do?
yeah, exactly. And I'm sure looking back at some of the things you witnessed and overcame with like the accident, witnessing your friend, get hit by a car, your dad passing away, tragic relationships. Like, I feel like a lot of that probably comes to mind.
There's not my days I have where I just like right now, I've had same bottle of tequila in my fridge for a year and a half now. It would have been gone a long time ago.
Yeah.
When Britt's accident passed, I don't know, like for a lot of people, that was traumatizing for me. She was not just a friend, that was like a sister. That was the mom of our group. She held our group together. But not only that, it was a establishment I had to pull into on a daily basis. So, but to know I was the one that had to call her husband and tell her daughter, who was only 9.
It's heartbreaking.
How do you call someone's husband and tell him, "Hey, your wife's not here anymore?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're fucking with me." And I'm like, "No."
That is heartbreaking.
My dad was a hard one for me because things I knew about my dad, like I went fishing with my dad when I was younger. When my dad was good, I knew he was good. I did get to go fishing. We have memories together. We got to go to Lake Erie. We did some cool things. But the older I got, I realized that he was trying to buy me. He would give me his credit card. He would basically say, I'd see him, I'd be there for 2 weeks and I'd only see him for a day. And then my mom finally gave me all these letters. It was a stack that my stepmom had sent and said it's not a good time for her to come out. Mike's relapsed or whatever it was. My dad had a huge drug addiction. My dad was a singer in a rock band. He was Mr. Blonde, blue eyes, 6'8". He was charming, good looking. My mom said that's why she fell in love with him. But he was a man of masks. She didn't know he had all these problems. And then, lo and behold, she gets pregnant with me and all the colors came out. And she's like, I didn't tell you because I wanted to keep you from your dad. She's like, I didn't tell you to protect you, which made sense. And I told my mom, I finally told her, I was like, I was never mad at you, Mom. I was like, maybe younger because I was young and naive and stupid. I was like, and I tried to use it as a, well, F you didn't tell me, blah, blah, blah. Because I'm an asshole and I'm a teenager at that point. Now I told my mom, I was like, I wasn't mad at you. I had a good talk with my mom not that long ago. And, I finally told her, I said, can I tell you something? And she's like, what? I said, right before Dad passed away, I said, how people get like a little spurt of energy right before they pass? And she's like, yeah. I said, Dad told me he always loved you. She's like, what? And I said, yeah. My dad did. He told me he always loved my mom. That was always going to be the love of his life. And my dad had a manila envelope that my aunt gave me when my dad passed. And it had the pictures of him and my mom in it. And it had all my baby pictures in it that I'd never seen, that my mom doesn't even have. So I guess my dad was around when I was a baby. I didn't know that. And my aunts that were just aunts, but I didn't know how, and my grandma, they were around. I didn't know how, but they were around. I'm thankful now that my relationship with my dad is a lot better. I was angry at him. Me and him didn't have the healthiest relationship. Once I figured all this out, I was like, F you ain't my dad, bro. Fuck off.
Yeah.
I was an asshole, even though he adopted me and, gave me his last name. I'm trying to build a relationship with my older brother. My older brother got locked up and did 10 years, I think, 10 years in prison. He had my aid. He came back into our life a few years ago, and it's not his fault, but, we're trying to get all that stuff back in order. And
Yeah.
now I'm just trying to do right by everybody and just be like, all right, cool. What do we need? Now, there's things that I still kind of struggle with trying to hang out with everybody. My younger brothers, we're all a little distant with each other, but drinking wise, no, not anymore. Not to hang out with anybody anymore. And not to deal with things anymore.
I like that. What advice would you give to some of my listeners that are in recovery or new to recovery, sober curious? Even though you still drink on occasion, I still find how you're doing it and how you're looking at life now really inspiring. So what would you say to
To be honest, find my mom's one of my lines my mom used to tell me, and it used to be something that used to get underneath my skin was, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. And it used to be something that just got under my skin. And as I got older and once I got like sober, I really actually had to take a look around at who it was I was surrounding myself with. And that's when I genuinely had to take a look around and be like, I didn't genuinely have to get rid of a lot of people, but I had to make time for myself. And times that I was struggling, I needed to figure out either was it myself that was the right person to be with, or was it certain people that were the right people to be with? And I had to find the positive influences to be around. And it wasn't those friends that were going to be like, oh, F, this, and that. It was the ones that were just genuinely going to sit there and listen, whether it was the same story 1,000 times over without judgment, because the ones that just sat there and basically told you, screw it, let's go over here, weren't the ones I needed to be around at the time. It were the ones that were just genuinely going to sit there and listen. And at the end of the day, that's the person I realized I ended up wanting to be, because those are the people that ended up helping me. And that's also the person I'm still learning to become. I am too much of a person that gives too much input when sometimes somebody just needs to vent.
Yep.
So
Good.
if any advice I can give anybody right now is sometimes the best person to be around for a little bit is just yourself, as hard as it is, but also find the right people that are just going to sit there and listen to you. And I found a lot of, random podcasts I had people sending me. I found different books. One of my favorite books is Unfuck Yourself. It's stupid, but I even went to coffee shops, and kind of just sat there and people watched. Would go down to the beach and just kind of people watch, or it's kind of weird, just go sit in parking lots and just look around and realize, like, is it really that bad? What it is I'm going through. And then I had to also realize I have a roof over my head. Bills are paid. There's food in my stomach. There may not be $1 million in my bank account, but as long as everything's taken care of, everything's going to be okay right now.
I like that.
And that's the things I needed to start looking at the positives and stop focusing at the negatives so much, because for a long time, a lot was so negative, and there was a lot of the alcohol taking over on that.
Yeah. No, it's well said. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for seriously sharing your story and being so transparent. Like, I think it's really crazy the stuff you overcome, and then the outlook you have now is really, really cool. So
Yeah, of
really,
course.
really appreciate you being on. Do you want to shout out like your Instagram for anybody to find you? Or
You can. So it's asoltero0623. Amanda. Anybody wants to add, message me, feel free to. And then, or TikTok, whatever you guys want. I think it's Choose Mom or whatever. I don't even know what it is anymore. Mr. Choose Mom, my dog. Me and him go on there all the time. It's just me and my dog.
all right, love it.
Honestly, he's my saving grace. He's been one of the biggest reasons that I'll grab him. He'll probably jump in here, but
What's his name?
Mr. Chew. He's probably the main reason. To be honest, a lot of the times I kind of made it around. So he makes
Same
that
here.
big.
My dog is my best friend.
If I didn't eat, he didn't eat. So
Mr. Chew for a reason, huh?
yeah, he says, Mom, if you're not eating dinner, I'm not eating dinner.
You gotta love it. They're all connected to us. So really appreciate you being on and sharing everything. Like, honestly,
Yeah.
It was fun talking to you, and really grateful for it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And then let me know if you do your body dysmorphia one, and I'll help.
Rock Bottom with Ryan. No bullshit, just recovery.